Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our February 18th Mornings with Mayesh. It's Yvonne here, and thank you for joining us for another episode. Ryan O'Neil is joining me today to answer your pricing and margin questions. He is the founder and CEO of Curate, a software platform with various products to help event professionals manage costs, track expenses, and stop overbooking rental items. Like Mayesh, he loves to share his knowledge to help others and is one of the reasons why we've had Ryan on the show several times. So I'm super excited about having him. While you guys are coming on in, say hello and let us know where you are all from and where you're all watching from. It's very exciting. I'll give everyone a couple minutes because I know we just went live. As we're going on, as usual, be sure to post your questions or comments in the comments section. If we have time, we'll definitely answer those questions. Another point that I wanted to make sure that you all know, because I actually get emails about this almost every single week. We always have a replay. The Facebook Live replay is available almost immediately as soon as we hang up the show. And then I upload the video to YouTube. I create a podcast from this video that you'll be able to listen to on pretty much every major podcast platform. And then I post everything over to our blog along with the show notes. So that way, if there's links or something that you want to refer back to, or just look at the questions that we talked about to see if your hour of time is worth it to watch and listen to, those are there as well. So you can just breeze through those really quickly. Sound good? All right. Good morning, Huntress Florals from San Diego. Hi, Danielle from Miami. Laura from West Palm Beach. Hey, Laura. I love that we have some Florida people here too. That's lovely. I am in South Florida, in case you guys didn't know that. The other things that I wanted to bring up before we get started is that we have teamed up with Sue McCleary for 2 amazing workshops here in the States, and then another one in the Netherlands, a once-in-a-lifetime experience. So the dates for those, just in case you don't know, April 5th through the 10th will be in the Netherlands. Then in July 1st and the 2nd, we're going to hit up San Francisco. And October 20th and 21st will be in Raleigh. So I'm going to post the links in the comments so you guys can check that out when you have time after this show. And I hope that you can join us. When we go to the Netherlands, we're going to also have Hanneke Frankma, and she's actually a Dutch designer, and she will be joining me for our next Mornings with Mayesh in a couple of weeks. So you guys will get to meet her. Love her work. I'm super excited to actually talk to her face to face. I've talked to her on the phone and through email and things like that. And she's a wonderful person, but I'm excited to get to know her with you all. Let's see. Good morning, Jamie. Crown and Thistle from Portland. We have Azel from Chicago. Hi, guys. Hey, Bradley. He says, colorful morning, Yvonne, from beautiful Boulder. How are you, Brad? He's from Design Master, guys. If you don't know Brad, he's amazing, and he loves education as well. Design Master is really great with all of that. RSVP, good morning. How are you guys? All right, so the last thing I wanted to bring up before we get started is to make sure that if you're not subscribed to our email list, I hope that you do. I put in the link, and that way you are staying up to date with everything that is going on. So whether that is a Mornings with Mayesh show, a new workshop, we send out newsletters. That way you get like once a month updates on everything that we've posted, all the great content that's up on our blog. And any just kind of cool events that we're involved with. So just really good to do. I hope that you subscribe. And good morning, Melissa. All right, so let me unmute Ryan, and we're going to bring him on. Good morning, Ryan. How are you?
I'm doing awesome this morning. How are you?
I am good. So for everyone that's just joining us, I just wanted to say welcome and good morning. I'm Yvonne Ashton, and this is our February 18th Mornings with Mayesh show. And today I have CEO and founder of Curate, Ryan O'Neil, and we're going to be talking pricing and margins and maybe even some tech questions if you guys have that. He always has a lot of knowledge to share on this topic, and so I'm so excited. Welcome.
Thank you very much. I love being on Mornings with Mayesh. Y'all have such a great group of people who tune in. And so it's always fun to talk pricing. Sometimes for me, it feels like I'm always talking about it. I like it. But flip side of that, I mean, from what you've told me, it sounds like there's a huge need in the industry for discussing it. So I'm excited about diving into it.
Yes, me too. But before we dive into it, can you just tell the audience a little bit about yourself and your flower journey, how you ended up in our lovely industry?
Sure. Yeah, most certainly. So I married an incredibly gorgeous, drop dead gorgeous florist in 2010 and sort of just knew I was getting into the industry from that perspective. She led a couple flower shops, was the lead designer in a few shops. And through that process, we just began to see a lot of things happening in the floral industry. And we thought it made a lot more sense for us to start a company. Me doing a lot of the business side, pricing, analytics, marketing work, and her to be able to really do the execution, sort of leading design. And in that process of us making that decision, it just made a lot of sense for us to step on our own and figure this out. And one of the things and you and I have chatted about this, that was just really interesting was there was no education out there at that time, 2013, no websites that just really broke down how do you start a company? How do you even price these things? I mean, you sort of had to go to in-person shops and in-person workshops to be able to get that. And I think those are really, really valuable for sure. But we were just trying to figure it out. And so throughout that process, we just began to learn. And we hit about every pothole you can hit, but we learned where the potholes were, right? And so we've tried to do our best to share those. And through that process of us starting this company, I never realized, I'll admit it, I was one of those husbands. I just never realized how much work went into curating an event. It's just, there's so many different manual files that were going into it. And so my wife, was doing all this stuff, and it was taking her forever to put together proposals and accurately pricing and creating something the client could want. And it hit me like, we can do this a lot quicker. And so that's sort of where Curate was born out of, this fact that at the time there was no other platform like what I was looking for. I tried to find it. And so we just built it. And we started at a kitchen table where we were trying to figure out this proposal. And from that point, it's just been incredible seeing the impact that we've been able to help so many florists with, for sure.
I love it. I love that story. So I just think it's so fun. And it really just ties in that you really know what you're talking about. You're not just someone coming from the outside being like, oh, this is a good opportunity. You really wanted to help make lives easier. We're actually just talking about that. Yeah. So I love it. Love it. So good. All right. So our first question, what advice do you have for someone that is just starting a shop and has no clue where to start with pricing?
Sure. Yeah, that's a great question. So there are, a few different approaches that you can work at with this. I very much, and I think we're going to potentially get into this as we start digging into some of these questions. I very much feel that from what I've seen, pricing differs from location to location. Is someone in San Francisco who has a storefront, they're going to be dealing with a much different pricing that they need in terms of markups and margins than somebody maybe in rural Illinois. It's just two completely different situations. But if you were getting started out, I'm about to give something that I rarely do, but I'm going to go ahead and do it. If you're just getting started out, start with just a 3x markup on your flowers. If you buy a rose for $1, put $3 on it. And I will guarantee you that in the long run, that's probably going to be the wrong number. It's what a lot of people do, but if you're really beginning to look at what your company should do and what profit you should make, eventually it's going to be the wrong number. And you should be continually investigating that. But I am saying what I wish somebody would have told us when we were just starting up our stuff. Just price it at 3-time markup on the flowers, price it at 2-time markup on your hard goods, anything that's not a flower, and then price it at I'd say probably about 20% labor, but you can actually build that in if you want it to into the floral markup if you want it, and just do like a 3.6 markup or something like that. So I know that gets a little bit technical, but essentially if you buy a rose for $1, sell it for $3, and be able to build that margin in. But as you start doing events, that's when you need to start revisiting that pricing and saying, how much am I making off these events? And maybe you're better than some people at being able to keep your costs low on those events. And that's important to know. And maybe you can reduce your costs. Maybe you can raise them. But purely saying, I have no idea what I'm doing, I'm just starting, or let me I'm pretty blunt when I say I have no idea what I'm doing. I'm just getting started. I would say start there for sure.
Lovely. Good advice. And then how do you determine the floral market given people's different locations, experience, different arrangements, all of that? You kind of alluded to that a little bit, how different markets are going to be different pricing and markups.
Right. So we actually built some pieces on this, and I think one of our team actually just put up this link to a blog post. It is kind of a complex problem, right? It's far from just something that's just like, oh, we'll just do this. So when you're at a point that you've got some events under your belt, you're able to really start digging into your numbers and what you need to make. We highly recommend you jump in and utilize this as a free markup calculator that we build specifically for this reason, because when we were trying to figure this out, there were no resources. And so that's why we built this markup calculator, just to say, okay, here's your expenses, here's the things you need to consider. If you truly want to find out what your markups are, you need to hit this. And a lot of it, and this is the heartbreaking thing that I think sometimes we miss in this industry, a lot of it comes down to you deciding what you need to make and bring home in the first place. Right. So as a business owner, do you want to make 50,000? Do you want to make 100,000? Are you, I've known some doctors that came into the floral industry just because they love the industry so much, and their standard of living is 150,000. So you got to create a business around what do I need to bring in and start with that end goal in mind to be able to take care of the family. And so this markup calculator really goes off that heartbeat of saying, okay, you have different experience levels, you have different willingness for risk, you have a different location. Here's all of these components that go into calculating that. But for sure, location matters, your overhead matters, like how much am I having to spend? Are you having to have a storefront or not? How much do I need to make, in the first place? Can I start out making no profit and just sort of surviving? When we did this, when we started out my wife's company, Rachel wasn't bringing home a salary initially for us. And that was something that we had to make that call at that point in time until we were able to grow our company to the point that we could. So all of those are factors you need to determine when you're trying to determine exactly how I price things.
Great. And guys, just another invitation. If you guys have questions while we're talking, be sure to put them in the comments and we'll try to address those as we're going. Our next question is, what is the best way to keep up with margins? Excel, software, pen and paper? I detest pen and paper, by the way, because if I write something down, I'm like, where did it go? I don't like things sitting around.
I have talked with florists that have some of the most elaborate Post-it note structures. I mean, it's amazing, like how they can do this, where it's like modular, and it's like you're able to pull this Post-it note and put it over here at this particular point in time. It's really incredible how they do it. But that is far from my skill set. Sure.
Good for them.
I know, right? I'm like, I can't beat that. I mean, that's if you've got that figured out. But to that point, I mean, a lot of times, Post-it notes don't come with margins and don't come with sort of that protection to make sure that you're being as creative and being as, I like to say, one of the hardest problems in the floral space when you're creating a proposal is you're having to use all of your left brain and all of your right brain at the same time. So you're having to run over to your right brain and say, how can I create this? How this person brought in this, picture from Pinterest that looked like it came from the underbelly of Pinterest. And I got to figure out how to do this thing with my own twist on it. And so you're trying to think creatively, and then you got to say, oh, hold up. I know she has a budget. You got to run back to the left side of your brain and keep up with that. So it's really complicated. And a lot of time it's disabling for some florists, not for everyone, but for some florists, that really is the biggest frustration part that takes them so much time. So, if you're just starting out, throw together an Excel sheet on this. We've got, again, we go to our site that we've linked. We've got some free resources for you just to download, just based on what we did growing our company. I would, unless, let me take a step back. Unless, you've got experience having built a business or you're really confident in your growth rate, I would hesitate to go invest in the software. And so this is kind of the guy that's a software guy that's saying, don't go buy a software, right? But the reason I say that is because you need to make sure you're getting it right. Now, if if you got 10 events booked for this year, like, okay, and you're just starting, maybe there are some questions there of like, I need to go back and invest in a platform. But for me, that's the biggest consideration. If you are already into this, I would highly recommend you getting a software. If you've already got over 10 events a year, you're starting to get to the point where, I literally was doing a walkthrough with a really huge florist, enormous florist, yesterday. And I took one of their old proposals and I put it into our software to sort of walk them through how this looks. And we looked at $130 bridal bouquet, and we priced it out at about $260.
Wow.
And so this is a very, very established florist who knows what they're doing. And when you actually put the numbers and the margins in there, they were getting half of what they thought in their mind that they were getting on their margins. And so that's a really important thing for florists to be able to have that protection of something telling them, hey, heads up, you might be losing $160 here. So again, when you look at a software that's $150, $250 a month, it's like, oh, well, that's expensive. But when every single decision you make is protected and you have multiple team members, and maybe it's not you doing every single proposal, that's important to know and for you to go back on. So that's what I would recommend. If you're just starting out, just grab an Excel sheet, grab a pen and paper and say, hey, here's what's happening. Here's how much I spent. Here's how much I made. But if you are trying to scale your company, if you are at a point that, you have multiple people touching proposals, you're very much at a point where there's a lot of benefit that could come from you being able to, keep your team, sort of democratizing that ability amongst your team, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's really great advice. And so when they're ready to make that next step and want to make that investment, then how do they decide what tech and what software to invest in for their business?
Sure. Yeah. So in the floral space, we see three key types of software. We see websites. We see, event floral software, like what Curate does. And then we see like POS style software. So the first question is like, where do you need the investment? I highly recommend a website. If you're specifically special events, then, you probably have one up. You can throw one up on Squarespace if you're just getting started up. If you're redesigning it, you probably need to think deeply about what you're needing out of it. If you're a retail shop, obviously you probably need some sort of online ordering structure. But one way or the other, you need to get that site. The second thing is, if you're doing more than 10 events, you need to be considering a proposal software and something that's going to automate that process for you and streamline some of those pieces that really just aren't talking to each other, and that you're maybe losing your margins or have too much waste left over after an event because you sort of just ordered what you thought you needed. So that's the second piece on there. And then the third is sort of that POS tool. So if you're doing transactional, and personally, I define the difference as being, how much complexity is in it. Transactional, there's no complexity. It's really quick. You're buying this, I'm selling you this. An event, that you have a lot more complexity, a lot more time involved in it. And that's where there, comes a little bit of a mix up there that you need to keep in mind when you're trying to decide, do I need both? Do I need one or the other? But yeah, I certainly would recommend like knowing what you need as a company when you're trying to decide what kind of tech I need. And then there's a lot of enhancement tools on top of that. For example, we have an integration with like Nowsta, which is a staffing platform, right? So some of our florists, they love the concept of the fact that you can reach out to, 15 freelancers at any time and be able to pick up, people can schedule their own attendance at an event. So that's cool. Huge deal, right? Exactly. So you get your foundation right, and then you start asking, okay, what areas of my company do I need things better? And so, for example, if you're using a website and you have forms, one of the stats that I like to share is, you are about 90% more likely to be able to reach a person if you contact them within 5 minutes of them reaching out than if you try to contact them at 10 minutes. That's kind of mind-blowing. But that's an important thing to consider is as you start digging in, okay, I've got the foundation there. Where am I missing opportunities? You're already spending the money for the marketing, but if somebody comes in as a lead, if you make sure you have a tool that automatically sends a response to them and says, hey, I received your email. I'm excited to dig into this more and find out more about your company. But those are huge, huge things that you want to start asking. Do my softwares actually do those things that sort of accent where I am in the company? And so that's one of the hardest parts about founding a company. And I can speak this as a two-time founder, is most of the time you don't know what you're doing. And you have to be willing to admit that and be willing to consistently look at your process and figure out, where are the gaps and how do I add tech to help solve that gaps? Even if it's just, buying Spotify Premium to play music around the shop. It doesn't matter what it is. Find the gap and say, how can I use technology to help my team and empower what I'm doing?
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. And just to go back to the website part, we get questions about the websites all of the time and what people should use and all of that. And for me, when you're building a website, it's just so important to make sure that you put where your company is. It's like
Right.
such a little
Yes.
thing. And I bring it up literally every time someone talks about websites. So that's what I'm doing right here, because either we get a lot of registrations, we go through people's websites all the time. I do it. Sometimes people ask me to do it, and they just want to know like how it could be better. But that's like my number one thing that I always see is people, florists are very, most of the time, majority of the time, very dependent on their geographic location. So,
Right.
if you don't have information about that and you don't have content about all the areas you service, and I love your wife's website with her blogs, it's very, just very picture heavy, and it just has like key information about like where it's at, like the city and the venues and maybe some other vendors. Very simple stuff,
Sure.
and people kind of overlook that, and that can make a huge difference in your business. And a website is so important. People are also relying on Instagram or
Right.
Facebook, probably mostly Instagram nowadays,
Sure.
to be their website, and that's such a bad thing. Not because you don't own it.
Right.
Number one, it could go away at any time, and not meaning that Instagram is going to go away anytime soon. I highly doubt that. They're so strong right now, but things change.
Right.
MySpace was huge, and now what is that? I mean, kids like
Right.
prime millennials don't even know what MySpace was.
Right.
Because it's
I've built my own
disappeared.
thing before of my on MySpace.
Yeah, but something where it's like, okay, you don't own it, it could go away. This
Well, and
is
they
a
can
more
change the rules too.
the rules, but here's a real life example. So I don't know, maybe 6 months ago, Mayesh's Instagram was hacked.
Oh my
And
gosh.
we were lucky because they changed the password and they just got rid of our bio and some other information, but they left our content alone. I literally had, it took me all my attention in like probably a week to get through to someone and get
Oh my
access
gosh.
back. So it took a ton of time, and luckily I have a team, so they were able to pick up the slack because I was like, I got to get this back. This is way too important. But we have Kelly Gerard in LA. She has this whole Kelly Polls Instagram page. It got hacked. They deleted everything, and
No.
yep, and she couldn't get her page back. So again, you don't own Instagram. If someone like takes your account and you don't get it
Wow.
back, then that's it. You have to start all over from scratch. And it's going to make you cry, because we were all crying. We were like, oh my gosh, what are we going to do?
Right.
It's such a big deal.
So many years of work. I mean, y'all have invested
Yes.
so much into that.
Yes. It was very upsetting. Kelly actually took a break from Instagram for a long time. She finally just started Kelly pulls back up again, but it really affected her. And so,
Sure.
then we were scrambling, making sure like everyone's like, because we have Instagram pages for all of our branches. So then we had to scramble, make sure like reset everyone's passes and make sure that everyone has like all the extra security. But even when you do, the extra authentication and all of that, it still can get hacked. It's
Right.
not owned by you. So it's just scary. So just don't rely on something that you don't own to bring in leads to your company, because otherwise, if that goes down, you're dead,
Sure.
if you don't have anything else.
Well, and I want to echo what you said as well about putting your location on your
Yes.
website. This is actually a huge thing for Google as well. It's not just for, it is for your customers, which is great, but it's a huge thing for Google to be able to verify exactly where you're at, like when you're with a Google Places account. So if you search, your city, it seems like we've got a few, somebody from Temecula, somebody from Charleston. If you search the name of your city and then wedding florist, like it's going to populate florist using Google Places. And it's going to say, hey, here's these. And that's their first thing. And so if you set up your website correctly and you set up that codification on the website, on the very front page, here's our exact address. Even if you work out of your home and you got to think of some creative way to be able to display that makes a big difference in your company for sure. So that's why, back when my wife and I owned Twisted Willow, when we were trying to redo the site, those were some key things for us that we knew, if we're going to build this, we've got to do it in a way that our customers know who we are and Google knows who we are.
Yes. And Google still extremely important. I think they're like one of our top referrals for our traffic to our website, and we do get new leads and new customers and all of that. So
Sure.
if it is for us, because it's there's a lot of people looking for wholesale flowers, right? It's a
Right.
little different, like a lot of consumers and things like that. So we're trying to like make sure that we get the right people into our website. Otherwise it makes more work for us. So
Right.
yeah, just making sure. It's such a huge deal. And I know, and people are so wrapped up with social media and things like that. And obviously love social media. It's a huge passion for me and my team. But SEO is still very important. We actually were just having this conversation with like our higher ups in the company. They're like, does it even matter anymore? And we're like, yes, it still
Right.
matters. It definitely does. Great. I love those topics. But we're gonna move on and get back to our core conversation.
We
So
can get sidetracked. There's plenty of rabbit holes around here.
exactly. I love it. That's part of why I love doing these shows. So how do customers make sure that their stem counts are all done appropriately so that they're not losing a bunch of money? Because
Sure.
that's huge too, making sure those calculations are correct.
Sure. Yeah. There's a couple different ways that I see that florists set up their stem counts. The first is before they hand over the proposal, and the second is when they're preparing their shopping list. If I think Cece, if you follow any her stuff, she's got some pretty strong opinions, and I'll let her state them as a lot more strongly than I'll state them about how you should build your stem counts. But what I've seen is traditionally, and this is the way we did it, we actually built our stem counts before we handed over the proposal, in that we would work through each of the arrangements that we had that we needed to be able to build, and my wife would very quickly be able to just populate that. So what she would do, and this is important, if you want to do this, it's hugely important. You need to have, whatever software you're using. Like if you're a Curate user, I'll just speak to that for those Curate users out there. You need to build that before you're even in the consultation. You need to have the entire proposal built. Doesn't mean everything, you're going to know everything. You won't know everything, but theoretically, you've already asked how many bridesmaids they have, how many grandmas need, corsages, things like that. You've already asked those things. And so you're walking in with all of the information already built. And so your goal during that is inspiration and getting this proposal out as quickly as possible. And so all you're doing is saying, okay, yeah, I need, for this particular bouquet, we've talked about this, I'm going to throw this information in. And it's far from going to be perfect, but it's going to get you, 95% of the way there. And what we found, we actually increased our on-the-spot booking rate by 400% by handing over a proposal in the consultation and saying, great, well, this is the cost that it's going to be. And it was a huge, huge number that we saw just in handing that proposal over. So again, if you're speaking for those of you who are Curate users, or if you use another software, if you use Excel sheets, whatever it is, have that thing created before you even walk into the consultation. And that's going to speed up so much of your time. And that's what we would do. And we would build that, at that point. The second way that people build stem counts are by building it. They basically eyeball it up front, which again, I'm sure other people in this industry will be a little bit more opinionated on what's right than I will. But they say, that's a $250 bouquet. And then they do it at the end. Now, to the point of earlier in our conversation, when I'm showing this large florist that they're charging half of what they need to be, all of a sudden that's a pretty big gut check of are you truly expanding that across your team? Does everybody know how to do this? But what I have seen for those who do this the best is they build up to that $260, whatever that $250, whatever the amount is for that bouquet or that arrangement. And so it's a little bit different than, let's say, maybe a food industry or something like that, where you can't change the amount of ingredients or else it messes up the dish. With floral, creativity comes from constraints. I'm a firm believer in that. Like if there was a quote on my life, it's creativity comes from constraints. Like you can't be creative unless you have some constraints that you're working with. So whenever you're looking at a $250 arrangement, you're having to build out the stem count. Don't build out what you think it should be. You need to build up to $250. That's your constraint. How do we build this into $250 and make this just an incredible experience? And again, your software or Excel sheet should automatically generate out that pricing so that people are able to see, oh, okay, I'm building up to this $250. And once I'm at $250, if I don't like what I have in it, I need to go back and think creatively. How can I adjust this? The third thing that I see is kind of not that great is when people say $250 and they just add whatever they want to into the stem count. And that gets really, really dangerous because you're throwing money away.
Right. Yeah. I know. Unfortunately, this creative business, there's a lot of math involved in accounting and just making sure, because if, it's a lovely business because it is beautiful and you get to be creative, but you still have to make money, or otherwise you're not going to be able to do what you want to do and make a living doing it. So that's why this part is so important. And I mean, we try to talk about pricing all the time. And I love that creativity comes from constraints. I wrote that down so that way we can make a little
make
meme with that. Yeah, love it. I feel like I need to make T-shirts with all the cool quotes that we get from everyone.
That would be cool. Just an entire Mornings with Mayesh shirt. I'm game. I'll buy your first one.
Okay, good. Yay. All right. So at what point in a florist business should they start looking at spending money on a tool that automates by processes?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the key, and this kind of goes back to what I said earlier, when you start seeing these gaps, when you start seeing, hey, I didn't close this client because it took us too long to build this, or when you're saying, hey, we showed up late at the venue because we were too busy packing because we had it, you'll start seeing it. It'll start popping its head up pretty quickly. We typically see 10, 15 events. If you're there and you've yet to use a platform, I'd highly encourage you at least to chat with somebody about it. I mean, our team would love to chat. I think we've got the link somewhere, curate.co/Mayesh. We'd love to at least chat with you and see whether or not it's a fit. And that's our big thing. We like to do consultations and see whether or not that'd be a fit. But it typically in the event space, on the event side, you're looking at 10 to 15 events, and it seems low, but we see continually that's a key number that people are starting to talk to us about. So I would say 10 to 15 events is when you at least start asking the question, like, let's look into this. Let's see whether this is going to make my life a little bit easier. And if it doesn't, if you've got everything done, if you've got your Post-it note system and it's killing it, awesome, like go with it. But you just have to know that and understand here's where my constraints are. Another big precipice is when you go from a one-person company to a two-person company. Like that's it. All of a sudden you introduce a whole bunch of congruency issues where one person thinks one thing, another person thinks another thing. If everything's in your head and you're the only person throwing together this $2,000 event, great, kill it, keep doing it. But at some point you're going to realize, like, if I want to scale my business and actually get to spend a night at home and enjoy my family rather than having to work through all these details, like I do need to do that. We worked with one particular person who she said to us, my boss doesn't know it, but every Monday I go home at 5:00, I get my kids dinner, and I spend 5 hours trying to build together these spreadsheets and these stem counts, and nobody knows it. But and she just took it on herself, and she gave up time with her kids. She gave up time with her family instead of having that conversation with her boss and saying, I've got to figure this thing out. And that's the heartbreaking thing for us to hear, is when people they're spending so much time in those gap areas where they know that there needs improvement, or they're not hitting the margins that they need to. Those are a few of the key areas that we see for sure when people need to start asking that question. And to echo Sweet Root Village, we're big fans of Sweet Root Village over here. If you don't follow them, you need to go follow them on Instagram. They are just such a cool team, and they do a lot of really neat stuff. But this is a business decision, adding software, and so many times we like to think it's an aesthetic decision or a decision that is something that is more on the creative side. But in reality, it really is a business decision, and you have to walk into it like that. It's more than just hey, I'm gonna represent my brand, because you have there's 1,000 softwares out there that can represent your brand really well. But you have to ask, is this those problem areas that I'm facing? Is this really solving those? Are we really getting back with people within 5 minutes with an automated email to make sure that they're connected? I mean, because that's a big gap. And those are pieces, when you start seeing those gaps, it's a tough swallow to be able to say, I'm now moving to investing $150 to $250 a month, or whatever that dollar amount is on software. But I promise you, it will make the impact, and it is a business decision that's going to make a big difference for you, for sure.
Yeah, we had similar decisions to make. Obviously, we're a different business, but we decided to hop onto HubSpot.
Right.
And we're a large company with a lot of reps and a lot of email addresses. So we have a
Hmm.
big database. And so it's a huge investment for the company. But it's kind of, we did recognize that. I always call it a black hole. We have a black hole for our leads. Like we don't know what is really happening. We like
Right.
have to send them out to so many different people. And we didn't really have a great automation process for anyone. And it's really made a huge difference. So yeah, you recognize the gap, you recognize the hole, and
Right.
we knew we were bleeding. We just want to like try to minimize that as much as possible. So we took that step, and it's been great. But it was hard. It's still hard sometimes.
Hmm.
It's a hard process, and it's something that's just has to become part of your business life, and it's something that
Yeah.
that it's going to evolve too, right? Like you're going to learn something and you make this process, but then there's new tools or new things or something changes in your business, and you're like, okay, you have to kind of go back, take a step
Right.
back, and reevaluate and figure out what you want to do and how do you want to handle that using the technology that you have on hand.
And I think you make a really good point there from the perspective of recognizing, like for you all, like this is a tough business decision. And one of the toughest things, and I know this from having been in this industry for 10 years,
Right.
it's tough to self-evaluate and get
Mhm.
really, really honest with yourself about what my company needs. And it's a tough decision, but something we consistently see is the larger companies who come to Curate as a software to ask for us for information, the larger you are as a company, the more likely you are just to pop in and be like, I'm not sure exactly, but I'd like to find out more and I want to educate myself. So, and
Right.
that's really interesting because the smaller you are as a company, the more confident you feel in your abilities. The larger
Mhm.
you as, once you're getting 200,000, 500,000, a million, 2 million in revenue, the more that we see that people are wanting to educate themselves and are willing to say, maybe I don't know everything like I'd like to, and have those really tough personal conversations. So again, if your goal is not to get to a million, then don't, I mean, like I'm being a dead serious on this. Enjoy your life. If you're where you're at, like enjoy where you're at. And if you really enjoy where you're at, but if you want to grow or if you want to save time or spend more time with grandkids, that's when you have to have those really, really tough conversations for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. This is all great. All right. Our next question is um, how can they ensure their teams are designing to to the price that was quoted to get the appropriate margins? I
Sure.
love this question.
Yeah, great question. So you want to make sure that whatever tool that you're using, you have the ability to generate that specs, the stem counts on those particular recipes, so your team can use them. Again, most tools out there should give you the ability to have like a photo attached to it. Some people dislike the costs associated with that. You don't want your internal team who's just filling in on a Saturday to see everything going on. So a lot of tools have the ability to remove that cost. I know our Curate does, but make sure that you have that ability to just print that out. Again, what our company did before Curate, BC before Curate. We were before Curate. What we did in BC times was we would manually do this legwork and we'd copy everything over to a separate sheet that we could print off. But obviously, BC, AC after Curate, we actually were able to just automate that and just print it out directly from it. So that's a piece for sure. And you have to manage it. And this is another tough conversation that has to happen. I know this is a growth point for me personally,
Right.
figuring out how to have tough conversations with team members and make sure that we're on the same page about what's happening. And so that means if somebody's overstuffing something, you got to get up enough gumption to say, you're overstuffing stuff. Let's keep to the recipe here. And that's again a tough question, tough conversation. But if you save all that time of just making it, you need to be able to use that time and say, okay, now let's actually have a fun time managing and growing our team and helping them become better while we still recognize we've got a budget we've got to hit.
Perfect. Perfect. All right. I did have a question come in from Tracy on Facebook. She says, hello. I love the idea of offering my clients beautiful proposals that are clear and concise with details, but is it possible to give too much information to a client, especially if they're not committed to booking your services? What is the right balance for this process? I think this is such a great question.
Yeah, it really is a great question, and so thank you, Tracy, for submitting that. This really depends on where you fall in the market. So I would hesitate to say that there's one particular answer to this, because I know some people that have a really long process in front. They work with the planner, they work with the client on figuring out their vision, and but they know when they look at their numbers as a whole, we're going to book people 80% of the time. Even though we're investing this time, we know 80% of the time we're going to book them. And they're even breaking down and saying, okay, who's that 20%? Why aren't we booking that 20%? Are we spending time with them? And they're breaking down and analyzing it. So, and the reason I say that this varies is because you need to look at your specific situation and say, okay, here's the time. And just do back of the napkin. I mean, your software should be able to generate some reports on this to say, hey, here's our sales, here's the things that didn't sell, and be able to say, what your ratio is. But if your booking ratio is where you want it to be, and you're spending a lot of time, then you just need to budget that in and understand it. But when you start seeing a low booking rate, then you need to start reconsidering that. And that's either the fact that you need to start getting more leads from better places as opposed to the places you're currently getting them from. Or it could be to this point, maybe you need to keep that funnel of leads that you have come in and iterate your business practices and saying, okay, great, let me give you a range up front. So one thing that we would do is we actually, we built a budget calculator on our site that just allowed people before they even walked in to be able to very quickly see what pricing was estimated to be. And that just helped educate them. So when we walked into it, and I've seen a lot of questions like this where people say, is it okay to ask the budget? Yes, it's okay to ask the budget. You're going to get plenty of people acting like they have no idea what you're talking about, but ask it anyways, right? Make sure you establish that up front and educate them up front. But to that point, if you do some of that legwork ahead of time, that solves part of that problem of you doing all this legwork and not being a price fit. But I generally say there's 3 reasons that somebody books a wedding florist. Number 1, because they like you, or at least can put up with you for 6 months. Number 2, they trust you. You've got the reputation, they see your work and they trust you. And number 3, because they can afford you. Those are the 3 reasons. And so you have to ask yourself, if I'm not booking, which of those reasons are we missing out on? Am I not establishing enough trust? Am I not connecting with them at a good enough rate? And do they not feel that they can afford me? And you can be able to break it down between those 3 and start asking that question. If it is an afford thing, let's fix that. If it maybe you do want to get somebody to get that price earlier, or maybe you do want to get them to commit to something earlier, then maybe you do spend a less time and do an initial consult. And if they book, then you do an expanded one for sure.
Very good. So you talked about the question that people are asking about, should I ask budget? That's great. Bradley wants to know, what was the name of the staffing app again?
Yeah, so we integrate with a staffing app called Nowsta. And so they're in the event space. Yep.
How's it spelled?
Nowsta.
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 Yeah. Great.
So they've got this cool thing for sure. You can send out the staffing, say, hey, we've got this, 5-hour block, we need somebody. And it sends a text message to everyone's app, or sends an app notification. And the first people who get it get the spot. Now you do have to pay per staffer. So you got to keep that in the back of your mind. It's like $3 a month, something like that. But I've known many times we would pay someone $150 extra because we couldn't find somebody on that weekend. So, keep that in mind when you're trying to weigh out whether I paid $3 a month for 15 people to potentially get that message.
Right. Very good. Laura says, being a startup company incorporated in December 2019. Congratulations, Laura. At what point and how do we speed up the new florist phase as being able to charge more and making more profit? Being the new florist, I find myself pricing at a discount just because I'm new. Any advice for her?
Same echoing what you said. Congratulations. That's super exciting to be able to make that jump. And I don't envy the stage you're at, but I've been there.
Yes.
For sure. So I would say that, so there's, again, let's go back to those 3 questions. Number 1, do they like you? Which typically is pretty easy. For most of the florists I've worked with, you're able to connect with someone at a deeper level and understand their vision. So that's number 1. And sometimes you have to have a really honest conversation with yourself if that's inaccurate, if you can't connect with people. And sometimes that's okay, so long as they can really trust you, right? So they sort of have to jump over that hump of you and they like your brand. Second thing, they have to be able to trust you. This is one of the biggest points for new florists that they have. So when you talk about discounting, I'll get to price number 3, but you need to make sure that you have 5 or 10 reviews on all the different websites. And if you don't have 5 or 10 reviews, go find anyone that you've done floral arrangements for and get them to go review you. That's a huge, huge deal, because that person needs to walk in with trust. So if you're discounting because they don't trust you and you don't have a reputation, deal with that very quickly. It's I guess post Valentine's Day, you can go find, St. Patrick's Day to go and just make arrangements for 20 of your closest friends and say, hey, I just wanted to make this for you. Would love it if you could put a review up for my work and really make it real. Don't get fake reviews, but still, one way or the other, do great work for somebody and find an opportunity to build that trust and to get photos to be able to say, when that client comes to you, that they have that ability to know, I trust you. I've looked at your website. I've done your research. I trust you. And the third thing is pricing. And Laura, I'm just going to be, I'm going to pull a CC here and just be a little bit transparent. I feel like one thing I wish somebody would have told us in that point in time is we're discounting because we feel unconfident in what we're doing. It's not, at least for us, it wasn't because we were a new florist. It was because we felt that we couldn't confidently charge particular prices. And so I would really encourage you to reconsider just discounting under that guise of saying, hey, we're a new florist. Because if people are continually saying that, hey, you're a new florist, it really comes down to that number 2. You need to make sure you're building up that trust. And most people just drop the questions. I mean, we would meet with people in coffee shops and no problem. But we built the reputation. They were totally fine with meeting in the coffee shop and talking about their vision in a Starbucks. So again, there is a chance that the place you're getting leads from is a more, I like to term it intimate budget. They have a more intimate budget that you're having to work with. Keep that in mind if that's the case. And you may have to work with that for a little bit while you scale up, but we started at a $1,500. I've mentioned this a lot before. We started at a $1,500 average event and we moved up to $5,000 within 3 years, right? So we started a little bit smaller and we did our legwork to be able to bump upstream.
Very good. Thank you. All right. Our next question is from RSVP Floral Design. She says, I thought I heard you say if you have 10 plus events per year, you need automation. Is there a good dollar amount that correlates to that as well? Sort of a magic number that makes paying for automated programs worth it?
Yeah, that's a great question. So there is, if you're doing 10 $500 events, it's probably not worth it, right? But again, it comes down to that gap. If you're starting, we typically look at the number of 25,000 if we're talking pure revenue. For us as a company, we see that people who come to us and are past that 25,000 in special events, all of a sudden that person, again, if they aren't sort of on this big trajectory where they're going to blow it up next year and when they know they are, if they're at 25,000, it starts to become, I wouldn't say a problem, but it becomes that consideration. You start feeling the pain a little bit for that. And so if I were to say what we've looked at internally, it's like 10 events, $2,500, right at that $25,000 mark. I don't know that you're not going to come in at for example, with us, you're not going to come in at the top tier of our software for sure at that particular point. And that's okay. We don't, for us, we're excited about helping where you're at. But one way or the other, you do have to start asking that question. If you're going to stay at 25,000, don't get a software. I would just recommend stay where you're at. But at that point that you're saying, hey, we want to grow this, we want to be able to scale as a company, you're going to start seeing those pain points a lot more. And that's when you should start looking at that automation.
Great. And that says 80%, but I'm not sure what that's referencing to. Do you remember?
Yeah, I was randomly throwing out a number on close rates. Okay. Yeah. There's another one of our friends, Jessica with Royal Bee out of LA. She's just an incredible business mind. She started on Curate right when she was starting her company from scratch. But she advocates like having low conversion rates, close rates, like 50%, because she says in her mind, in her business model, it makes more sense to drive more leads and get better clients by having lower ones. There's a whole debate on that, which is a great one. So I would hesitate to say there's a perfect closing rate, but you need to ask that question I mentioned earlier for our markups and everything. What do I need to make personally as a company for me to be where I want to be? And then build backwards on everything from your closing rates to how many leads come in to what your markups would be.
Yeah, the closing rate too, I think just depends on how you're driving people to contact you. If you're really into inbound marketing like Mayesh is and you're really And then curate too. You're really like focusing on content and just getting out there and putting yourself out there and then funneling that back to your website. Obviously I think the close rate should be higher because you're trying to kind of pinpoint that right client, making sure you're getting the right people into your door at the right time.
Right.
But if you don't have that type of strategy, which is okay, then it might be lower then. So
Sure.
I think
For sure.
yeah. Okay, so there's a question about freelancers. I don't know if you know the answer, but RSVP asks if there's any idea if NAUSTA is affected by the AB5 in California. We just have our hands tied in regarding to hiring freelancers. I have no idea what that means. Do you, Ryan?
I'm Googling it right now and I can tell you. Yes, with my deep legal advice that I've just picked up. So, from my understanding, there's just some complicated things. I have read a couple articles about this, and specifically when it comes to freelancers for florists in California, just how it's affecting them. It sounds like they're still trying to work out a couple kinks on that specific one. Again, this is me speaking from one article I read, but it does sound like California is trying to be able to work through any specific cases that small business owners are being effective, and rightly so. I would hope they would work through it. I'm unsure if NAUSTA handles that, but I would recommend at least looking into it because they are a U.S.-based company, which means there is a good chance if that's on their radar. So, for us, we have more integrations than any other software of our type because we want to enable different functionalities. QuickBooks integration, Google Calendar integration, all those pieces. But when it comes to specifics like that, we typically trust on our integration partners that they're doing a good job looking into those pieces. So they would be a great. I would really recommend just go to NAUSTA. I think NAUSTA.com maybe. Go check them out and just start a chat or an email chain with them and just ask them. What are you doing? How are you dealing with that?
Very good. Thank you. Robin asks, how do you get a real consultation? The clients just want to email and text these days.
For sure, that's a great question. You're probably looking for the wrong target, depending on how big of events that you're looking at. If they only want to email, it's cool to email and text, but if they only want to email and text and say, hey, just give me a price, you're looking for people that are typically doing $250, $500 events, which are great if you're doing them in a large quantity. And maybe there's a strategy there. I know some florists who would love that audience. Right. They can kill it. Because they built a business model around it. But to that point, if you're wanting to get larger ones, you need to be asking, who are these people that are texting and calling and email or texting and emailing? Yeah, nobody wants to call. I take that back. Nobody wants to call. Who are these people texting and emailing it? And the second point on that, you have to educate your clients as well. The onus is on you to do the education and say, hey, great. It's, again, remember that 5-minute rule, that automated email that goes out, you need to have it and say, hey, here's our processes. Here's a blog post that explains what you should expect. And you build that rather than them not knowing what to do and making it, because I guarantee you, and I'm sure nobody will believe this, but brides will make up the process in their mind if you don't tell them. They'll say, well, this is how it works. And then you're stuck in a situation because you didn't do the homework ahead of time to really educate that person. Here's how this process works. And for the most part, they're totally fine with it. But you just have to take that step forward and educate them. So that would be my biggest recommendation. 2 things. Look at where your leads are coming from. Number 2, see about creating that education ahead of time.
Very good. We have a question about Curate from Whitney. She says, is Curate a good fit for companies that don't do traditional florist services? We too are a new company, the Chick Florist, and we specialize in maintaining flowers for homes and businesses and floral styling for business launches and promotions.
Cool. Whitney, again, congratulations. That's a really, really cool niche you're going into as well. I think more florists need to be jumping into that niche and making an impact there for sure.
Yeah.
So to answer your question, yeah, we have a lot of our clients that will work with that. They'll specifically build out more job-based, and I use the term event or wedding a lot, but it comes down to a job-based functionality. If I have this specific job that's more complex, it comes down to that question of complexity. It's more complex. I need to work with people. I need to set up an invoice for it. I need to be sending out an attractor proposal. So to answer that question, yes, we work with a lot of companies, and we'd be glad to have one of our team members show you through some use cases that they do, more specific to being able to, maintain flowers for homes and businesses or having corporate recurring clients and things like that.
Very good. Robin has another just thing about proposals. What about the clients who take your proposal to shop to another florist? I refuse to do that for my side.
Yeah, that one's tough. And so I've got, again, kind of a fun, controversial answer to this typically. And that is you got to stop worrying about people doing this. If it is a big enough deal for you, then you need to only give it to them in the consultation and don't let them leave with it. I personally have never been a big fan of that, just from the client's perspective, because you're hurting your good clients because of your bad ones. And to that point, at some point, there's a deeper reason why they're taking that proposal. And you have to dig into why is that deeper reason that they're walking that proposal around. And some of it, again, comes to education. Some of it comes to setting them up for the conversation of pricing in the first place. Some of it is, just even learning. Like maybe the reason that, and I'm making this up, but maybe the reason they're taking it around is because they aren't ready to make a decision for another 2 months. Right. So they got plenty of time. And if that's the case, then did I set up the conversation right with them in the first place? And so, again, it can be frustrating, but that'll keep you up at night when you got plenty of other stuff to keep you up at night. That's one of those things that you really just have to say, you know what? I'm gonna set my limitations on it. I know a lot of our florists, we have an expiration date in our platform. And so they'll say, okay, great, this is expiring on this date, and it keeps them from having that live link anymore to see it. So that's a great tool that you can use for that. But in the end, I really think that this is an internal thing that we as florists have to be able to just wrap our minds around and say, you know what? I'm going to get better leads, and I'm going to figure out a way to educate people better, and potentially maybe put incentives. And like Christina Berrigan's a great person at this. She puts incentives with if you book within 24 hours, you get this incentive. And so you're taking away that thing for them to be able to shop that particular proposal around.
Right. Very good. Love it. All right. We're going to do one more question. Let's see. Krista says, what tools do you use to communicate with them on how the process works? Automated emails, or do you wait until the consultation to explain the process moving forward?
Yeah, great question. So you have to do it throughout the process. You are educating from the moment that inquiry comes in, and even before they come in. When they're on your website, you're educating all the way to the point when you're picking up, that footed silver vase at 1 a.m. from the Carmel room, right? Like you are educating the entire time. And so educating on the process, it's just a consistent thing. Again, this is the first time many of your clients will have done this, and especially if we're talking about weddings and events. And so you've got to be in their court, and you got to figure out, how do I set that up? So yes, automated emails, as soon as that comes in, say, hey, here's how our process works. You don't email Christina Berrigan and not get an auto response back from her because she set that up to say, hey, here's how this works. Da, 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 da. And maybe some people think it's overkill, but she's killing it. Maybe she is, I guess you would say, overkilling it. She's doing awesome I'm such a big fan of her. But one of the reasons is that she says, I'm going to make sure I get this stuff done, and I'm going to educate every person that comes into my email box. And you have to make sure you're doing it in a way that fits with your audience and what your goals are, for sure. But at the same time, have your forms connected to an automated email that sends them to a blog post that says, oh, great, we wrote this blog post. It's not about you. This is for everyone, but this blog post is going to help you.
Yeah, I love it. It's perfect. All right, Ryan, I want to get to know you a little bit more. So I have some rapid fire questions that we're going to have a show with. You ready?
Sure.
All right. What's your favorite flower?
Yeah, my favorite flower, I don't know. I just picked up my wife some parrot tulips the other day. I don't know that they'd be my favorite. Hers used to be stargazer lilies when she just got started, and then it's sort of transformed. She'll take whatever flower comes her way. I would personally have to say potentially stargazer lilies. Mainly, I'm not the super attracted to them, just mainly because of the history involved in it. For sure.
Very good. What's your favorite color?
Red, for sure.
Red? Interesting. Coffee or tea?
Coffee, I think. Yeah, coffee.
Coffee? You think? Most people are like one or the other. It's funny.
I do.
You like both?
I do coffee every morning, but I should probably do less of it. I probably should do more tea.
Roger that. Who do you admire the most?
Oh my gosh, that one is a tough question. It depends. I've got multiple areas of life like that I look at people. Like if I'm going to talk about like someone from being a mom, I mean, my wife is just such an incredible mom. So I just admire her ability to love our boys. Like she's the only other person that can love our boys at my level or more than me. I love from a business perspective. I love some thought leaders like Clayton Christensen. I get into really nerdy stuff here for sure.
Very good.
Yeah. So, those are a few different, it depends on what area of life we're looking at for sure.
Okay. Are you a morning or night person?
Both.
Both. What is your favorite hobby?
I don't have many hobbies.
I'm with you there.
I like snowboarding. I'll give it to snowboarding. Like I
Okay.
just love, I'm not a big fan of like exercise where you have to force yourself to do stuff, but like if you're
Right.
going downhill, like it does most of the legwork for you. It's pretty tough, but it's still, I really enjoy snowboarding.
Yeah, like activity kind of stuff. I gotcha. What is the strangest thing you've ever eaten?
Oh, that one's a tough one. I would have to say, no, I've done a lot of international travel. I ate something in Costa Rica once that didn't sit well with me, but I can't remember specifically what that was. I'll have to pass on that one.
Okay. What is one of your weird quirks that you want to share with everyone?
My team will echo this. I am super data driven. Like I'm annoyingly so. Like I want to know, like if people are like, okay, well I think this. I'm like, well, why? Like where did that come from? Like what are the thoughts behind that? And so that's
right.
It's really an annoying quirk, but I love to understand deeper than opinions. Like, okay, if I need an opinion, I've got an opinion. Like those are free. But if we're really going to make a difference in florists' lives, like, what do we do? How do we do that? So that's a big quirk of mine for sure.
Yeah, we have those kinds of debates on my team too. Someone will say something and I'll be like, that's great, but why do you think that? Is it just because that's what you like, or is there a reason? Do you have information? Is there a study? Is there articles? I want to know.
Exactly.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Are you a dog or a cat person?
I would say I'm a cat person, but I'm really not much of an animal person. I've just determined that I don't want to clean up after animals. That's sort of an efficiency question, but I would prefer a cat if I had to choose between the two.
Yeah, I love my dog, obviously, but yes, I would love not to have to clean up dog for the other stuff that comes along with having animals.
For sure.
All right, and now, what is success to you?
Yeah, for me, it's specifically when it comes to Curate, it's just making an impact on a lot of small businesses. When I hear somebody say, "Hey, I'd like this feature," and we can do it in 4 hours, and that one thing that we did, obviously we got a lot of foundation, we can't do everything in 4 hours, but that one thing that we did then saves that person 5 hours a week. That's a big deal, and that's a big impact. And so for me, when we look at a lot of the lives that we're hearing feedback and consistently trying to grow and save people a little bit more time and let them spend more time with their family, from a Curate perspective, for sure, that's a huge success for us.
Very good. And then I just wanted to wrap up and just ask, is there anything new that you got going on in Curate that you want everyone to know, and how do you want people to connect with you after the show?
Yeah, that's a great question. So you can connect with us via our Instagram account or Facebook account. If you'd like for information about Curate, obviously that's what I'm here for. So you can go to curate.co/Mayesh, and that'll give you information on how to be able to chat with our team and see whether or not it's a fit. But yeah, so some of the big things that we're pushing, we are rebuilding our platform to better scale. And this is a really, really big deal. For the longest time, we have refused to compromise on giving people an incredible experience. And again, this goes to that business conversation I said earlier. Right. When we're looking at business versus aesthetics, like we could have compromised a long time ago and built some really attractive themes for and we've got some incredible things that our florists say they love. But at the same time, we could have built a lot more than what we've already built if we had made some compromises from a technical standpoint. What I'm really excited about, we have spent the last 6 months rebuilding our platform so that for the next 10 years, we're able to more quickly create these really incredible aesthetic experiences. At the same time, we're able to give our customers and their clients, their brides, their grooms, their business clients, the ability to have mobile-friendly proposals, things that scale with technology for the next 10 years. And so it's kind of a longer answer, but for us, that's the big thing. We're really excited. It's going to be next month that we officially start pushing users to this new platform. Our users, if you are a user listening, you don't have to do anything for you. We're going to take care of the legwork for you. We do all that on the back end. but it is going to give us the ability to provide more functionality to our customers and save some more time. So that's the thing we're excited about. And it's just perfect timing, going into wedding season, and people are looking for platforms to be able to scale with over the next 5 to 10 years.
I love it. So good. Congratulations, Ryan.
Thank you.
It's been
It'll be good
amazing.
to be done with.
Yeah, it's been amazing just watching you guys grow. I love it. I'm
Sure.
so happy for you. And it's, you're a great person and the company is amazing. So I hope you guys check it out if you feel so inclined, and all this exciting stuff going on. I see one question here that I feel like I have to address. Texana wants to know, she says, please make a YouTube channel, and so that way you guys can rewatch the videos again and again. And guess what? We have a YouTube channel, Texana. So make sure you check it out. We have all the videos up there. I think I don't even know. I've lost track. I know I have maybe either 500 or 800 videos up there between Mornings with Mayesh, design, just little tips and tricks. And we pull out sometimes segments from these shows and all of that. So yeah, check it out. It's all going to be good. We have like old product showcase videos, which I would love to do again. Just, we run out of time and resources. So make sure you check it out.
Cool.
Anything else, Ryan?
That's great. Thanks for having me on, and thanks for doing this. And y'all make such a big impact in the industry, and we really do appreciate. Like, again, in 2013, if you had done this, we might not have started Curate, because we would have got all of our answers from here instead of it. So I really appreciate what y'all are doing. That's a heartbeat for us as well. And so I really appreciate the fact that y'all do this on such a consistent basis and make an impact in the industry.
Very good. Okay, guys, literally this is before I let you go, Ryan, because it's a technology thing. So I wanted to share it with you too. I literally just got a message from my team just literally 2 seconds ago. So we created an Instagram filter. So you know how all those filters were going on about like what kind of car are you, or what kind of Disney character are you? So I wanted to create one that's what flower are you? And so we created it. My team is awesome, Desi.
Cool.
And we had to submit it to Instagram for approval. And we just got approval. So it is available in the filter. So we're going to be having a lot of fun with that. We'll be recruiting all of you guys. You guys are literally the first ones to know. Insider scoop. See? I'm so excited. So make sure you guys check it out. Definitely, we'll probably be playing with it on our stories and all our branches and all that. So you guys can check that out. So you guys can find out what kind of flower you are today.
That's
awesome.
So
have fun with that. Yeah. So guys, with that said, it is a wrap on today's Mornings with Mayesh. Make sure you mark your calendar for March 3rd, because I will have award-winning Dutch designer Hanneke Frankema on, who, by the way, is one of our designers at the Netherlands Workshop Experience coming up in April. Check it out. And again, thank you, Ryan, for coming on the show. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. And I will see you next month. Have a rocking day. Bye, everyone.
All right. See you later.